Do you ever feel anger? I know I do. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains the cause of anger and how it establishes in our mind and how we can overcome it. Chapter 2, verse 62, it begins. Krishna is explaining to Arjuna here. While contemplating the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment for them. And from such attachment, lust develops. And from lust, anger arises. Then he goes on, verse 63. From anger, complete delusion arises, and from delusion, bewilderment of memory. When memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost. And when intelligence is lost, one falls down again into the material pool. So let's take a look at what Krishna is explaining here. So, verse 62. Krishna is telling Arjuna, while contemplating the objects of the senses. What is contemplating the objects of the senses? When we are thinking, we're always meditating on something. People sometimes say, I don't know how to meditate. I never meditate. No, you're always meditating on something. Whether it's on what you're going to eat, whether it's on your girlfriend, whether it's on, the pain in your toe, we're meditating on something. So contemplation, meditation on the objects of the senses. What happens? A person develops attachment. So by contemplation, by allowing our mind to just focus and fixate on the objects of the senses, the things that we see, that we touch, that we want to hear, by contemplating on those, by fixating on those, what happens? Attachment for those things arises. And then from there, from that attachment, lust develops. Lust, the word lust has a lot of baggage attached to it, but ultimately lust is like the seeking for something outside of ourselves, the desire to have it, to gratify our own senses. And from lust, anger arises. Why? Because from lust, when we cannot fulfill the object of our lust, frustration and anger becomes present within our mind and our heart. So very easy to understand, step-by-step process, brilliantly, simply, directly said, while contemplating the objects of the senses, thinking about the stuff that you want to taste, touch, feel, a person, you and I, develops attachment for those objects. And from that attachment, lust arises, desire. And from lust comes anger. Now, what's the next piece? 63. From anger, complete delusion arises. Okay, we get angry. Then we can't think right. We can't think straight. The jails and the prisons of this world are full of people who were angry and took a stupid action and destroyed their life. We all can see that. Okay, so from anger, delusion arises. We just heard where anger comes from. Now, complete delusion arises. From delusion, what happens? Bewilderment of memory. You can't remember what's right. You can't remember what's wrong. You just lost it. When memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost. Here we go. Intelligence. You don't have any intelligence when you can't think right, when you're not remembering what's right, what's wrong. And when intelligence is lost, what happens? One falls down again into the material pool. What is the material pool? It's the pool of, it's a cesspool. It's a whirlpool. It's like you come and you see a tidal wave. It's rushing in and it's pulling you out and it's whipping you all over the place, throwing you here and there. How is this happening? We know, we can see the material energy. As much as we try to control it, as much as we try to have our life lined up just exactly the way we want it, we can't control it. We're just pulled here and there. We think that we're holding on to some life raft of our house, of our bank balance, of our family, of whatever it is, but it all can be ripped away from us just by the winds of destiny, just so easily and simply by this material pool. So we're falling into the material pool by being attached to this material energy, by being attached and losing our intelligence and losing our memory. Based on what? It starts with the contemplation, the fixation on the objects of the senses. So how do we overcome this? How do we overcome this? It's explained in Bhagavad Gita, next verse. Of course, Krishna gives us the answer. but a person free from all attachment and aversion and able to control his senses through regulative principles of freedom can obtain the complete mercy of the Lord. Okay, regulative principles of freedom. Usually we're thinking regulation is the other side of freedom, is the lack of freedom, is bondage. But actually by controlling and not being pulled by our senses and regulating, using our intelligence to regulate our senses, not just being pulled here and there by our senses, we actually gain freedom. Freedom is when we have control over what we choose to do, not our senses pulling us into wherever they want to pull us. And then what happens from there? We're able to think clearly. We're able to not fixate on those objects of the senses and not get attached and not end up in a place of anger. And if we do, we can pull ourselves out of it because we have the intelligence and the discipline that was developed through our own free will to not end up in that position. So regulative principles of freedom can, and then what happens? We can obtain the mercy of the Lord. The process of self-realization is a process of mercy. It's not a process of us creating, I'm a big guy, I'm going to become the greatest, I'm going to be a self-realized person. We're becoming humble. We're becoming receptive to the divine, to the mercy of Krishna. We are humble, we are tolerant, we are accepting of what comes to us from Krishna. We are willing to accept and tolerate whatever it is that we need to tolerate to attain that self-realization. We are not ascending to the heights of self-realization. No, we are taking the mercy as it's coming down to us. And so this is what's being explained. But a person free from attachment and aversion. We're free from attachment and aversion. Aversion, the things that we don't want. Aversion is like a negative thing. You know, it's like, I don't like that. That's aversion. We're free from judging what's happening to us as good or bad, right or wrong. We're just accepting what comes. We're tolerating. So we're free from all attachment and aversion. So we're not seeking after something in this material world. We're accepting what comes, and we're not judging everything that happens to us and complaining about it. So and then we control our senses through regulative principles of freedom, and we can obtain the mercy of the Lord. So let's understand this. Anger arises from the attachment that we have to the contemplation of the objects of the senses. Then from the contemplation of that, the attachment, lust desires. From lust, anger desires. And then, from lust, anger arises. Then once we don't have the objects of those senses, when we can't get them, or if we do get them, we become greedy, right? Like, think about it. If you get what you wanted, you just want more. Like, you just want more and more of it. It's never satisfied. So even if you don't get it, you're frustrated. And if you get it, you just want more of it. That's just how it works. You're never fully satisfied. So the idea here is to break free from the attachment and stop it. Stop the contemplation before it starts. And then from there, we can curb that anger. We can start at the root and not let the anger grow to a point where the mind is diluted and the intelligence is lost, in which case, from that point, we've already lost. And we end up down back in the material whirlpool, getting swished and swashed around and thrown back out into the ocean of ignorance. A little bit about anger, how to overcome it. I hope this video was helpful. Please chant Hare Krishna. It's very simple. Thank you very much. Chant Hare Krishna. Be happy. Read the Bhagavad Gita. It's free. Go to the link in the description. Please like, share, subscribe. We want to get these videos out to as many people as possible. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next video. Hare Krishna.